They're not going to trust an outsider with the life of the dome's champion. Invarian, said the head of sector maintenance, over the comm. This had better be good. I've got 24 survivors in the Sector 6 airlock. They need medical care. Janus checked the time. 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Seconds matter. Is Craig Bennin among them? Dom admin is all over my ass to mount a rescue mission. Hold on, Janus said, putting him on hold. He looked at Meg. We need the aspirant in here right now. She waved her suited hand to tell him it wasn't happening. They threatened to fight us if we tried to take him again. The mad bastards think outsiders tried to murder him. Janus looked at the clock. 3 minutes and 50 seconds. There was one person outside who might be fine or already dead. There were close to 30 inside who were dying. The rescue buggies would be there for the aspirant in a minute or less. Craig would probably be okay. If Janus tried to take him by force, more people would die. Seal us in, he told Meg, and he saw her eyes widen through her visor. I need you outside to hold that breach, Meg. Once we're pressurized and the inner doors open, the whole sector is at risk. I understand, Meg, said, grabbing 3 more early shifters and squeezing back out through the ruptured door. She triggered the emergency system, instantly deploying an inflatable barrier that expanded and self-sealed the far end of the chamber. The barrier would form fit to the breach as the pressure rose, but wouldn't last if someone took a sharp object to it. I'm back. We have the aspirant, Janus told the head of maintenance. Praise the survivor. What do you need? The man asked. I need you to use the software override to take manual control of the air distribution system before we get a second blowout. I can't, the head of maintenance said. Control system is shot, or we would have shut it off already. You need to replace it. I'll talk you through it. Janus swore, checked his suit's pressure sensor, and rushed to the APF control panel. The chamber was pressurizing at about 1 atmosphere every 20 seconds. And at 3 atmospheres, they would either rupture again or kill the breached survivors. He forced the front of the control panel open with a crowbar and looked inside at the blackened electronics. Trilith crap. The head of maintenance. Okay, new plan. I need you to wire the app into your suit computer, and I'll access the program from here. Janus hesitated for a fraction of a second, knowing that if whatever fault killed the control system fried his suit computer, he might not have air to breathe either. You've got those rescue buggies still on the way, right? Yes. Of course, the head of maintenance said. Now, pull the plug with the green and blue cabling and insert it into your suit jack. Janus did as he was told, praying for the survivor's luck, that the cables didn't spark and ignite him in the high oxygen atmosphere. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Janus, Meg said over the comm. Hurry up. They're trying to break in. They can't, Janus said, gauntleted fingers fumbling with the wires. We're pressurized. They'll blow the airlock all over again. We'll try to hold them. Meg answered. I've got the connection. The head of maintenance said, and Janus slumped against the wall. He felt both exhausted and elated. In the middle of one of the worst times of his life, he'd shown he could pull it together and do his job under extreme pressure. He'd saved lives, and while that was a reward in of itself, he hoped it would also show Dome administration that he was the kind of person they wanted to work for them. Maybe even put him in charge of something. The flow of oxygen slowed and then reversed, bringing the pressure back down to a standard atmosphere. Meg, Janus said over the comm. Oh, I think we're going to make it. Have the rescue buggies reached you? Yet. She didn't answer. Meg? Janus asked, switching to the early shift common channel. Are you out there? One of the other members of the team answered. Meg's gone, Janus. The idiots guarding the aspirant were trying to breach the airlock. We tried to stop them, and it got ugly. She died, stopping them from killing everyone. The airlock's inner door squealed open. It had to be forced with a hydraulic spreader because of the damage. But they got it far enough open for rescuers to flood in. The Sector 6 medical staff quickly took control, stabilizing the most critical patients first, before moving them. Janus sat against the airlock wall, cables snaking from his chest plate to the burnt-out control panel, helmet off. His own primary life support system wasn't working anyway, so there was no point in wearing it. Where's the aspirant? A doctor demanded. Outside, someone said. He got rescued. What do you mean? He got rescued. He's supposed to be in here. Janus watched without saying anything. The sounds came to him like his head was underwater. All he could think about were the numbers. 5 injured people died in the airlock. 27 injured people live. 2 early shifters, including Meg, died, preventing the crazed people outside from cutting the emergency barrier open. Only one of the attackers died, as well as Craig Bennin, Prime Dome's leading aspirant candidate, and Janus had lied about him being in the airlock to get the others' help. Was that murder? Did it matter if it was? Or that the idiots outside insisted on waiting for rescue until it was clear Janus's plan was working? An aspirant was dead, and so were 8 additional people who died in the initial blast. Ryler, I need you to go to my apartment and get Callie. Take her to your parents' place. Make sure she stays safe, Janus sent over the comm. Janus? What's happened? Ryler answered. Janus? The restraints DomeSec clamped around Janus's wrists cut him off from the Dome noosphere, preventing him from answering. They took him away. A note from the author, Debot in Void Runner. Sci-Fi, survival adventure. Lore, trilith larvae triliths are a silicon-based life form that uses hydrocarbons and polymers as lubricant, binder, and conducting gel. It is unclear how they evolved in the vacuum of Irkalla, although perhaps they are a holdover of a previous geological era when life was possible on the now barren planet. Triliths generally subsist on rocks and pockets of frozen carbon dioxide, living slow lives of browsing and growth. The presence of humans and other easy sources of carbon-based organic matter can accelerate both the growth and opportunism of the creatures, although at the larval stage, they are generally too shy to scavenge from human settlements directly. Chapter 8. Sector 6. Trime Dome planet Irkalla, Survivors Refuge 4452.213. Interstellar, a team of 6 DomeSec officers forced their way through the crowd. It was all a blur to Janus. Questions, accusations, curses, and pleas were pelted at him by the emotional masses without any of it sticking. Something more tangible struck him in the side of the head, and his escort laid into the press with their stun rods, scattering people, dragging him forward by the arm. Time seemed to jump. The long white corridor of the detainment center entrance was sliding by. It all felt like a dream. "Take him to confinement too," the desk sergeant said. "You're joking, right? This guy just murdered the aspirant." The officer holding his arm responded. "Dome admin is going to be all over this," she answered. "Take him to C2, and no accidents along the way." The DomeSec officer cursed and shoved Janus along, a left and then a right, taking them deeper into the facility, automatic doors opening and shutting behind them. They reached another hallway of unmarked doors, and his escort opened the first door on the right. Janus stepped into the room. "I need to." Blinding pain. And the crackle of a stun rod interrupted his words and dropped him to the floor. He could taste blood. He'd bitten his tongue. "You void-sucking idiot." The sergeant said no accidents. "Wasn't an accident." A self-satisfied voice answered. The door to the room slid shut and locked. Janus laid still for a time, ears ringing, face against the cool floor. After a few minutes, he was able to push himself up onto his elbows. He wiped his mouth, staining his glove red, and pushed himself up to his feet carefully, still shaking from the nerve-disrupting pulse. He was in a blackout room, isolated from the dome's network. His wrist implant worked fine. It just had no signal, so he couldn't contact Callie to make sure she was safe. The room was small but more comfortable than he'd expected, with a desk and chair, a twin bed, and its own sink, toilet, and shower. This was probably where important prisoners were taken. People with credits, lawyers, and connections who would probably get released and hold grudges. Janus was still in his hard suit, processor burned out, helmet missing. He went through the process of stripping it off, dropping it in a pile to the right of the door, noticing the extent of the damage for the first time. He'd been a few layers away from being one of the victims, and not known it. He started to shake. This whole screwed-up ordeal had been everything he'd fought to prevent. And it happened to him anyway. His coveralls were filthy, so he stripped them off too, and turned on the shower. "They'll probably bill me for the water," he thought as the heat washed over him. But he didn't care. It didn't matter if he was a few credits short. They were going to pitch him out of the nearest functional airlock, and he didn't have a suit anymore. Money was the least of his problems. After an indecently long shower, and using too much of the provided soap and shampoo, he lay on the bed with a towel wrapped around his waist. Meg was dead. Callie was on her own. Maybe Ryler's family would take care of her, although they had no reason to. Ryler might be willing to, but Janus couldn't put that on him. She was a prodigy, unlike her idiot brother. Maybe Dome admin would take her as a ward, or maybe they'd release Uncle Ivan to take care of her after Janus was gone. Mr. Invarian? A woman said from the door. It was the lieutenant who'd interrogated him the day before. "I brought you a change of clothes," she said, looking at the mess he'd left on the floor. Her jaw bulged when she saw the blood. Do you need medical attention? I'm fine, Janus said. The security logs show one of my officers discharged his stun rod in this room. If you want to file a complaint, I didn't see who did it, Janus said, cutting her off. He didn't need enemies right now. He might not have any friends left. I'll leave you to it then. She left the spare underclothes, coveralls, and boots on the desk. Janus got up, folded the towel over the back of the chair, and started getting dressed. His uncle hadn't let him mope during their first days in Prime Dome after Prometheus Base fell. He'd been forced to pull it together, take care of his sister, and get on with his studies.